Hey, Brett, hope everything's going well. I know you've had a couple of days to look at, the tape of Monday night. I know the offense was going up against the number two defense. What did you see from the offense that you particularly liked from either the running backs or the quarterbacks?
Jim, first off, I like the way we handle the ball, right? So from the snap to the QB exchange, whether we were under center, whether we were in the shotgun, when we were handing the ball off, when we were throwing the ball, when we were catching the ball, other than the one fumble in the second half, we really were pretty efficient with the football. I thought we had some adverse weather, more than we had seen as of late. Got a little chilly there at the end, and there was good wind whipping. Our guys caught the ball extremely well, and did the right thing after the catch with it as well. So I was happy with that. With the orange unit in particular, I would say the blue offense, at times had some flashes. They were having a tough time up front, really getting the plays going sometimes with some of our defensive, which I'll give the credit to our defensive players. But again, even in light of that, we really didn't have ball security issues with that second group or with the blue group as well. So I was pretty pleased with that. That jumped out to me. I thought really the orange running backs, all three, Chase Hayden, Reggie and Chase Brown, all kind of had a moment of, wow, that's pretty good. You know what I mean? I would say both orange quarterbacks, BP and Isaiah, definitely had some flashes. I thought BP threw the ball well in the first half. Really had planned on using him, but because the game went a little bit long, removed him at halftime and got Isaiah those reps with the orange group. But I thought those two guys did some good things. Thought our tight ends caught the ball and did some good things. Wide receivers, I think Donnie has been a guy that really has just gotten better every day. Kamari caught the ball well. Really Carlos Sandy had a nice, I would say, last 2 weeks of spring ball as well. So a lot of positives and definitely a lot of things we got to get better on. Don't get me wrong. We got beat inside a couple times in the run game, pass game, which have to be negated if you want to be a good offensive football team.
I mean, you mentioned about Donnie Navarro. Had you seen that explosion from him? He had a lot of yards after the catch the other night. And has that been something that you've seen him do throughout spring camp?
Jim, it has. It's been a guy that's kind of impressed me. Obviously, I watched, the games from this past fall and some sporadic games from the past, but I just kind of saw that now he's playing with a lot of confidence. He's a guy that, is constantly in Coach McDonald's office and he just does everything right. He reminds me a lot of players I was around in the league that everybody's always going to want to be a little bit taller, a little bit faster, a little bit bigger. But he catches the ball extremely well. He knows exactly where he's supposed to be. He converts and he competes. He took a play that it was a 3rd and 4 play, if you remember, that really was just a borderline, a quick route, stick route, about a 4.5-yard gain. He caught enough at the first down. And then defensively, we had 2 guys miss the tackle and he converted it into a 44-yard gain. So you take a 4-yard 3rd down conversion and turn it into a 44. Now the ball's across the 50. You're in the fringe. You dramatically change the game right there off of one guy. Like obviously BP threw it. We had 6 guys protecting, but one guy caught it and turned it into a 44-yard run, and that's a big deal.
Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Brett, good to see you again. I think we've probably talked about this earlier in spring ball, but now that we've actually had that scrimmage that we all got to see, I'll get your thoughts on it now. Those 3 running backs that you just mentioned, trying to balance their workloads, and then possibly if you throw Mike Epstein in if he decides to come back, and I know you mentioned Jakari Norwood on Monday as well. What are your thoughts on trying to balance this running back room when it seems like you have so many guys that can just go out and give you some legit reps?
Yeah, it's a great question. I've always, during my head coaching tenure, have enjoyed the ability to have, 3, possibly 4 guys as a running back. I remember my first Rose Bowl, we had John Clay, who was an all Big Ten performer who went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Backing up him was a guy by the name of Monty Ball, who ended up being a Heisman Trophy candidate. And behind him was a guy by the name of James White, who's still playing in the league. And behind him was a freshman by the name of Melvin Gordon. So, if you get the right guys to line up that spot, which I'm not too sure we're a good spot. I don't know where they're going to be, down the road, but I think that's our intention. That's how we should be able to recruit here. And you get a situation like that, you're going to try to find ways to get in the ball in the throw game and the run game. And then if you can get some players on the perimeter. And then I tell you what, a lot of people, don't catch on to this, don't realize it. The key to a good run game is a good tight end. People defend the perimeter and wide receivers and jam the box to defend the run game. And then the guys that end up being rewarded because of that are the tight ends. And I thought Luke and DJ and even Marquez, made some nice catches the other night that could be a big factor in that.
And I know we've talked a lot about guys on the orange side, but I wanted to talk about one guy on the blue side, Dion Pate on the defensive line, one of those few upperclassmen that was on that blue side, especially with the fact that some of those guys on the orange D line have been suffering injuries, guys who weren't even in the game on Monday night. What impact do you feel like Dion could have on that line?
I like Dion. He actually probably had one of the better performances. He's a guy that always is engaged. I love his energy. There was a workout earlier in the winter where he kind of jumped out to me as a guy that it was one of those days where maybe everybody needed to be prodded a little bit. And he was kind of setting the intensity level and everybody had to follow. So I love his demeanor, love his work ethic. I think he tries to do things right. That's a very a deep position for us right now. Obviously, a lot of guys that are on the field Monday night, but there's a lot of guys that are physically unable to perform right now because of surgery. So it's going to be an interesting fall camp for guys fighting for the playing time at that position.
Thank you, Bret.
Thank you.
Coach, I want to take you back to December when you got the job. You talked immediately about how you had a recruiting job to get some of the seniors to stay, and this unique situation you had. I haven't had the spring game and haven't gone through most of spring ball. What are your thoughts about how that process has played out for you?
Been a true blessing. I give Josh a lot of credit. He wanted me to go see that Penn State game when that opportunity came, and we went there. And I'm going to tell you, when I was sitting there watching those guys compete in a season that had been really long, a head coach that they loved and cared for had been let go, and not a lot of probably working and playing for some position coaches. They didn't know if we're going to be there or not. I saw a team fight and compete, and that's what drove me to that comment on Sunday when I met with them the day after that game. Listen, if you're in this room now, I want you to be a part of what we build. I'm coming into your family, and for us to get where we want to be, the more we can be together than apart, we'll be a lot more able to have success sooner than later. And obviously, a lot of those super seniors stayed. I tell you, I got a bunch of guys that are in that normal senior class as well that I don't want to lose sight of. Isaiah has probably been one of our most consistent performers, been very impressive guy. So that normal senior class, there's a lot of really, really good players. Marquez, different guys that McCarron, guys that maybe we're not thinking of them as seniors, but they truly would be seniors in a normal situation that are kind of very impressive to be around.
And then my second question, since you've emphasized tight ends, my question is about Tip Ryman. Of the orange team, he was the only walk-on to be in orange the other night, kind of your third tight end, it looked like. What can he bring to this offense?
Well, Tip embodies what I always talk about, tough, smart, dependable. He's absolutely awesome. Great addition to this room. Obviously didn't know much about him before coming here. He's a guy that, has only been here a short amount of time, but he really buys into what we're selling. I do think he appreciated, I think the game, on Monday night got big for a moment. So it was really good to get him that experience. So hopefully in the fall, that'll be second nature to him now, but really like his approach, his demeanor. He's got a very bright future. He's got the skill sets of what you're looking for at that position. I always say from a walk-on department, undersized, under-recruited, underdeveloped are really three good words because they can all change instantly. And I can't help that he was under-recruited. We can't help him. He's a little bit underdeveloped right now where we're at. And he's not really undersized in height, but he's undersized in mass. So we can change that as well.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Coach, were you able to see enough the other night without showing too much?
I don't know. I mean, I know what we did. I guess the idea and the premise is people think we didn't show, but we really did. We kind of put out there what we are, offense, defense. Thought our guys defensively lined up and, played our base defense the way we want it to be played. I think the orange showed that way. we had some depth issues at safety, just a little bit with guys being out. But other than that, I thought our guys kind of lined up in our base stuff, offensively, defensive, and special teams, and did what we asked them to do. So I'm not saying you're right, Bob. There's more in the cookie jar. Don't get me wrong. But this spring, we've also been pretty limited. We just kind of wanted to get good at playing football, and we'll have fall camp and game prep to get ready for that other stuff.
When do you start looking at the opener in terms of like really nuts and bolts to what you're going to try to do? Is that way down the road? Or is that sooner than I think it is?
As coaches, it'll be a little bit sooner than players, right? So coaches, we need to make sure we know how to go through a scouting report. We need to know how to evaluate our first 4 games for sure, get a feel for what it is. We'll definitely do preparation on our first 4 opponents as though we're playing them in week 1, all 4 of them, because then by week 5, which I will and the coordinators will have already taken an extensive look at everybody in our division, of course. But you have to get together on page 1 as a staff just to make sure that you know how to handle a game week. We can't get into Wednesday of game week and have a conversation about our scouting report or how the cut-ups are made. We have to have that several times over before we get to actual game week.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep.
Hey, good afternoon, Brett. I'm wondering, I know you got transfers coming in and more guys coming in and competing, and you got so many practices left, but how much can a depth chart change after the spring and into the opener?
After the spring?
Yeah.
Yeah. They're I'm not saying there isn't going to be, we've asked some guys offensively, defensively, and obviously Caleb's position, special teams, we've asked them to try different positions. That's still ongoing with guys. Anybody that I've asked to try a different position, it's not anything they formally have to do. We encourage it and explain why, and if they do it, they do it. An example is Marquez, right? He played 2 weeks at linebacker, and he's been 2 weeks at tight end, and the results have been good. But ultimately he'll tell us where he wants it to go. I hope he stays where we're at. But depth charts can change. With this transfer world, I'm not naive to the fact that I got 101 guys on this campus right now, and to think that all 101 of those are going to tell me they're coming back for the fall, I'm probably would be foolish to think that. I think we've all got a great kumbaya spirit right now, but bottom line, somebody's going to have a different outlook on what they think is in front of them, and that we'll cross that bridge when it comes. Literally, we get done with our last practice on Saturday. We'll meet as a staff that night. We'll have a personnel meeting on Monday morning. I'll go through exit interviews all week with our coaches, and I'm sure we'll get a few curveballs coming our way during the course of the week.
I'm sure the details are private, but like what is the goal of those personnel meetings?
Well, really, they're non-football. To be honest, Jeremy, it's where they stand athletically, academically, and socially. So hey, is it a player that we want to add maybe 5 pounds during the summer? Do we want to take 10 pounds off him? Is he a guy that every one of these players, we made a list before spring ball started, and we'll do it at the end. What are their strengths and what are their weaknesses? Share open conversations about that. Do we think that they can make a big jump in communication skills, right? Maybe assign a book or 2, whatever we got to do to get them thinking about something. I've been very specific with guys. To get specific reactions, you got to give specific tasks, right? So if I'm asking for someone to be a different player, we might give them an NFL prototype player that, hey, we think you're a lot like this guy. Why don't you watch this 80 play cut up and tell me what you think, and give them projects to make them think outside the box on what they could possibly do as a football player.
And then I just have one quick one. The NFL draft is a week from, I think, 2 days, 8 days away. What do you do? What do you tell your team, being on the NFL side, being a head coach? What do you tell them to look for about the process? Because I know there's a couple of Illinois guys hoping to be drafted. You haven't coached.
Yeah.
What do you tell them about how to prepare themselves for that moment in future years?
Obviously the 4 guys that worked out for pro day here, I had talked to all of them. I just hadn't really had a chance to be around them. I've been around Kendrick a little bit. He obviously entertained the idea of coming back, and Hobbs did as well. I just always tell those guys, your agent's going to tell you one thing, but the reality is probably somewhere in between. And, it doesn't matter when your story, just like recruiting, right? Everybody's story is different. everybody wants to be a 5-star, get recruited and all the bells and whistles. But in reality, a lot of times the story you have in recruiting is your story. Just live it, own it, and make it great. Whatever happens in the NFL draft, there's never anybody that's ever, unless you're the first pick on an overall draft, the guy that got picked second, he thinks he should have been picked first, right? So like nobody's ever really satisfied. Like, when the Seahawks gave me a opportunity, I took it and ran. They only wanted me for 6 days, but it was a great 6 days. So like, I think the part that everybody has to understand is your story has got you to the NFL. The thing that's different about the NFL, everybody thinks when you're drafted or when you sign a contract that you've made it. All you have is an invitation, right? There's going to be 90 plus guys that go to camp and they're going to cut it to 47, 53 man roster in the fall. Half the guys are going to be eliminated. So if you begin to think that, once you sign that get that phone call or get that draft or get that free agent pick that you've made it, you got another thing coming.
Thanks, Bret.
Yep.
Bret, I know a lot of people in the spring game Monday night saw your tight ends catch passes, but I want to kind of flip it and ask what you've seen from them in terms of commitment into the physicality in the run game, especially out of DJ and out of Luke. DJ seemed to mention to us today that that's a big emphasis that he's put on himself, is to get better in the run game, get better in terms of physicality as a blocker. Where are those two guys at right now with that aspect of the game?
I give them both a lot of credit. I agree with you, Matt. Like there's two parts to tight end play, the run game and the passing game. And normally a lot of guys are a lot more interested in the passing game than the run game, but we've kind of made a commitment to these guys, what we need out of them. Thought Coach Peterson, design-wise, has done some really nice things. And I tell you, Ben Miller, who I got from Air Force, was a running back coach. He's applied a lot of what he learned in offensive line play, and as a good coach, he's really impressed me. What he's asked these guys to do. I thought our tight ends from practice 1 to where we are now going into practice 14 tomorrow are as one of the most improved groups on the football team. So I give a lot of credit to the coaches, but also, DJ and Luke, as you guys know, are both unique personalities, and I would say have openly bought into what we've been asking them to do. And ultimately, the people that will be rewarded the most are them. They both are guys that potentially have an NFL type demeanor to them, makeup, athletic ability. They got a long way to go. NFL tight ends are usually a little bit bigger, a little more bumps, and a little more mass. So they got some work to do in that regards, but they're definitely guys that have great potential and upside.
Thanks, Bret. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Hey, Coach, you talked real briefly about the defensive line earlier today and how they played Monday night, even without guys like Jamal Woods and Rod Perry, who I guess have both put some impressive film together in their Illini careers. So how much confidence do you have in that defensive line room when those guys get back, and then the depth that you have behind them?
Alec, I think it all starts up front. It's been no secret that in my career, I've really believed the character of your team has to start up front offensively and defensively. I'm a former D lineman myself, played D line, so I know if that group takes control, we got a really good chance to have success. And you start getting some of those linebackers that are out that are behind them. We play a little bit differently here than they have in the past in the front, playing with our hands, knock back, squeeze, and doing some things up front that allow these guys to play a little more physicality, and they've really bought into it. Calvin is a guy that jumps out. He's got really, really high upside. A number of guys, have shown some flashes. I think there'll be a big jump in fall camp, honestly, because they kind of just are starting to get it now, and understand what we're asking them to do. And then obviously, like you said, with Woods and Perry, and I think the edge guys with Isaiah and OC, Steph, Zeke, and a couple other guys, that group can have a huge effect on the game early for us.
On Monday, I had to go back and watch the game for a story I was working on, but you spent a lot of time on screen answering questions, and you allowed some of your players to do that as well. You seem to really want to communicate what you're trying to sell and like your platform, and you seem to be using it to sell that. Why is it that you want to get out the word about what you're trying to do so much?
Alec, it's probably not me trying to get it out. It's probably just me being me. You guys probably obviously experience this on a weekly basis on Zoom. Like maybe I'm like somebody you've been around in the past. Maybe I'm unlike someone I've been in the past, but the only thing I can do is be me, right? I ask our players every day, you know, 3 things, right? You know, do the right thing, be respectful of others, and be the best you. So if I'm not doing that, I certainly can't preach it to them. I think in a spring game situation, people that I talk to, like the stigma of a spring game is it's really not a game, but I get that, but I was trying to make it that way for our players. That's why I tried to get us that Monday night slot. And then when the game is going on, you know, if I got recruits, even though they couldn't be in the stadiums, I wanted them to hear what we were doing, why we're doing it. They get to talk to me all the time on Zoom. If they could see us interact, right? At least to let her have a chance to, you know, have some fun out there. I mean, our guys were, I promise you, DJ Barker couldn't wait to catch that pass on the Big Ten Network and do the floss. So, I mean, like, there's a lot of things, like, it may seems like a little thing, but it's usually recruiting driven. I can promise you next year when we play Nebraska, I'm not going to give a second quarter interview while the game is going on. That is not going to happen. But this afforded us that opportunity. And then really the players they interviewed, they had a whole list, and I just kind of just gave them 2 offensive, 2 defensive guys that I knew weren't going to be involved in the game when we asked them. But that's really the driving force.
I'm sure I know you've been in conversations with recruits since Monday night, but have they kind of commented on, you know, you being on the screen and the players being on the screen and talking on the headsets and all that kind of stuff? Have they shared any comments about that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even, you know, the advantage of a recruit or someone that's sitting in the audience, they see it live. So they'll shoot you a text knowing that you're not going to get it till afterwards. I got to my office, there's a whole slew of different comments. So, I mean, like, and then on, you know, the next day after, and you know, by the time I got done with you guys in the media and checking in with the wife and doing all the stuff I needed to do, it was late on Monday night. But over the next day, Tuesday, we didn't have our players in the building. It was an academic day for them, so I really was able to reach out to a lot. And there was positive feedback, not just from our recruits, but, you know, I've met a lot of donors now. I've met a lot of former players. I've met a lot of people in the Illini family that made comment. But hey, I get it. I'm kind of like you guys, right? The honeymoon is on, right? We haven't lost a game. Everybody's excited, and if we lost on Monday night, we have a whole bunch of problems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a quick follow-up, Brett. You mentioned Rob Perry. I know you've seen him on film and he played a lot. Where do you see him fitting into that defensive line?
You know, I think to be quite honest here, man, I think he can probably play multiple positions. I think he's obviously a nose. I think he can play 3. I don't know if he gets wider than the 3, but I think athletically, what I've seen, he could probably play some heavy 5, you know, tight 4-eye shade scenario. So he actually, to your point, he tried to find me, I guess, is about, I think I had a text from him about 5:45 on Monday night. I don't know what he wanted then, but it was something that must have been about the game on the sideline. I didn't want guys wearing sleeves that were on the offense side. So that kind of slid into everybody thought that they couldn't wear sleeves. And then he was good. So I don't know what. So last night I was shooting a text and I just said, hey, I didn't get your text till late. Do you need anything? He goes, no, it's all good. And I made a comment to him. I said, well, you probably want to try to play some running back or tight end. And that went into a whole nother conversation because he has a tendency to over exaggerate his athletic skill set. But we'll see where it goes.
Sounds right. Thanks.
Coach, I have a quick follow-up as well. You mentioned the Nebraska game. With that being week 0 and with only 5 games in college football and that being the only Power 5 matchup that day, I guess the assumption is it's going to be a national broadcast. Do you see that as an opportunity? You know, how will you, in the same way you wanted the exposure from the spring game, how will you view that Nebraska game?
Robert, you're speaking my language, man. Like I as soon as we knew the game was going to be canceled out of Ireland, right? And we had to get, I don't know how Josh all went about it, but we were able to maintain that week 0 matchup because I think at one point there was thoughts that they were going to move it, you know, to the normal spot it was during the season. Again, I wasn't involved in those discussions, but once they locked us into that week 0, I started hitting every ESPN Big Ten Network contact I had to get the best time slot available, you know, from the possibility of College Game Day to anything we can, you know, even possibly assume. So, yeah, I think we're the only Power 5 matchup, obviously a divisional opponent. You know, I have great respect for Scott. I've known him in this profession for a long time. Brett Shenander played at Iowa, so I've known Brett, the defense coordinator, for a long time. So there's a lot of ties that make it kind of a neat matchup.